I've always had a fascination and intrigue in the main series Far Cry games, between Far Cry 2 all the way to Far Cry 4. And I own all of them up to Far Cry 5, except Primal. Now, each of them have perks within themselves. Far Cry 2 had exceptional survival abilities. Far Cry 3 had a beautiful story, beautiful characters, big, beautiful world. Far Cry 4 had a good villain that could have been expanded upon a lot more in his lore, but with what we were given, Pagan Min was a fantastically written character for what we were given. And the best part about Far Cry 4 were the graphics. The graphics were basically Far Cry 3 revamped and remade in a whole entirely different region. And it looked beautiful for the then next gen, PlayStation 4 and so on. I own Far Cry 5, but I never got around to playing it. A couple key factors as to why. I just never really had the time. There were so many new releases around the time frame that Far Cry 5 released. And then on top of that, the more I prolonged the wait of playing it, the harsher and harsher of things I was hearing about it. I was just hearing how average and generic Far Cry 5 truly was, outside of the religion-themed survival story. So I don't really have a personal opinion on Far Cry 5. I have watched some parts of it. I thought it looked okay, and that was probably at best. But it did look like they tried to do something a little new in basing it in cities and towns, I guess, and with it being about religion rather than survival. So now we get Far Cry 6, where they bring in a huge name for the villain, Gustavo Fring's actor from Breaking Bad. Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't remember his actual name, but I absolutely loved Gustavo Fring and the actor's portrayal of him in Breaking Bad. So that drew me in immediately into Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6 got the benefit of the doubt from me like any other game. Any other game, it did not matter how bad a game was. I swore to myself that I would play it as much as I possibly could. It could be a piece of crap. It could be like My Little Pony for PS5 or something. And if I had a PS5, I would play it not to my heart's content, but I would play it to the point where I felt content enough to be able to review it. With that being said, Far Cry 6, I put in roughly 6 hours in the story and the gameplay alone, and it's bad. It's really bad. It's not bad in the sense of it's a terribly made game. No. But it's bad in the sense of it is generic, standard, first-person shooter. I really enjoy the secondary characters. What we were given, some of the characters are really unique. There's a character in it whose pal is an alligator crocodile. I never really remember the difference, but just on a whistle, the alligator just goes and attacks people, and that pet becomes your ally throughout the first part of Far Cry 6, and then you gain more and more. Now, I did really enjoy the secondary characters the more we got to explore with them, because at the beginning of each mission, not only do they have descriptions and paragraphs that explain the mission detail, but for the mission that you're given from said secondary character, they are also providing a narrative and a background of them, why you're doing it, the lore behind where you're going, and I did find that stuff intriguing alongside the secondary characters. Outside of those good things of Far Cry 6, this game is just a hollow shell of what this series formerly was. Okay, Far Cry 3 was the peak point of Far Cry. And that's just my personal opinion, but I would say, objectively speaking, Far Cry 3 is the most popular in the entire series. But Far Cry 6 does not give you anything new. Okay, they recycle. Even the flamethrowers, they recycle that from Far Cry 3 and above. The flamethrowers you use to go and light up plants and weeds and stuff just to burn down and destroy people's towns and their camps. And it's just all so been there, done that, and done so much better in the past. Far Cry 6 is just a hollow shell. This is what Ubisoft has become, okay? They are just settling at this point. And this game is a huge wake-up call to the current and future generations of gaming. If we continue this path of gaming is going to end up dying out. These games that we are given are so standardly atrocious. Far Cry 6, I could not bear to play anymore. It is so generic. It is so standard fare first-person shooter. I enjoyed that they brought in a third-person aspect for the cutscenes and cinematics. It makes it feel more like a living, realized movie and world. But this game, 90% of it is just all recycled rehash of what has been done so much better in the past. Far Cry 6 is not, I repeat, not a system seller, a series seller. It's not a company seller. Far Cry 6 is just going to be played over the release weekend and then forgotten about the next day. I promise you. I'm not saying don't play it. You should play it. You should experience it and understand what I'm trying to tell you. And on top of these gameplay issues as well, how they are telling the story, it is so erratic. The pacing is so off the walls, bonanza. It's just so everywhere. You don't get a second to actually convey any kind of emotion towards any character. You don't get a minute to experience what's actually going on. It's just people talking, and then stuff happens, and then people get twisted up and lied to and whatnot, and it all happens within a 5-minute time frame. And that's honestly the intro. You just start out with a monologue about how Gustavo Fring's character in Far Cry 6 is just a communist leader. Been there, done that in practically every single game out there. And then it doesn't get better from there. You become this character where you can choose female or male, and then you go right from there to talking to your girlfriend ally, and it's just an intro of running. And you just run, stealth kill, run to a ship, and then you meet the big bad, like all Far Cries. You meet the big bad right at the beginning. He does some weird, stupid stuff that is supposed to drive you in. Really psychotic stuff. Well, when you compare him to Voss, Pagan Min, he just doesn't compare. Gustavo Fring's actor does a solid performance, but the character, the main villain himself, is just not really good. He's not a good villain at all. He has a son or whatever, and basically his plot device to said kid is truth or lie, and the kid chooses, and then he just continues with what choice is given. None of it screams fresh or original. None of it. This game is made like it's supposed to be some big expansion of the series of Far Cry. And honestly, in reality, it's not. It is so inferior to most games in general. Far Cry 6 is just so hell-bent on staying in the formula without any substance behind it. I honestly, other than the secondary characters, and it's not even all of them, it's a couple of them, other than those couple secondary characters, I didn't find anything compelling about Far Cry 6 in my playthrough. I may play it a little more tonight, but I honestly am mostly checked out already. Like I said, I put in about 6 hours. I think that is giving a game at least the benefit of the doubt. But I'm sorry, if I can't find anything compelling in the first 6 hours, it'll just be more of a waste of time after that if I continue. And I'm not going to finish, say, a 10-hour, 15-hour game when I already have not found anything compelling to stick with it. So overall for me, Far Cry 6 is not a terrible game. It's just so hell-bent on staying standard with the standard formula, the standard gameplay, the standard storytelling, and everything is just so standard that it's so inferior and so poorly made as well. So for me, Far Cry 6 is a 4 out of 10. Thank you.